good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. And we're just going to get ready to start by giving introductions. So I'll introduce myself. I am Amanda Malby. I am the International Admissions Officer in the Graduate School. And then I'll turn it over to our guests today from our International Student Scholar and Services Office, and they can introduce themselves.
Hi, everybody. My name is Charter Morris. I'm Director of International Student Scholar Services here at the University of Alabama, and I'm joined by two of my colleagues who I'll let introduce themselves. Trung?
Hello, everyone. My name is Trung Nguyen. I am the Associate Director of International Student and Scholar Services.
Hey, everybody. I'm Casey, and I'm the CBIS Coordinator at International Student and Scholar Services.
So we're all very excited to talk with you today and hopefully help answer some questions for some of you. This may have already been covered. You already have some of the initial documents and you're just kind of making your way towards arrival on campus. For some of you, you may have just been admitted and are really starting this journey. So hopefully there will be helpful information for everybody in attendance today. And I know that there were pre-submitted questions that I hope that we'll be able to get to. And just keeping in mind the time that we have with each other, I want to make sure that we get started so that we can get through everything. This is the second one of these sessions that we're doing, and last time we went a little over the hour, so I want to make sure we get everything in. To get started, I just kind of wanted to share with you International Student Scholar Services contact information. So our office here is meant to do visa and cultural support for our international students, faculty, staff, and researchers here at the university. We're open Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. until 4:45 p.m. That's true of most offices on campus here. Our website can be found at international.ua.edu, and we're the ISSS office there. You can email us at international@ua.edu or give us a call at 205-348-5402. About our website, you will find most of the information that you need here. Under the future and new student section, you'll find links to the admissions information about linking back out to the graduate school's information page. It's just kind of a redirect page. We have information about scholarships and financial aid, none of which is administered by our office. It's just, again, redirecting you to the graduate school's information or each of the individual colleges' information or to external websites. And then, of course, to the I-20 and visa information that you'll need. And that's really the part that we're here for today. Again, we have this very long URL, international.ua.edu. The shortened URL is just is.ua.edu. It'll take you directly to our landing page and get you right to the information that you need. And with that, kind of getting into the main focus of today's session, I'm going to hand it over to Casey Akins, who's going to talk to you about how to get your I-20. But overall, the visa process, it's a long one. We understand that. And, you know, it begins with your admission to the university. And the next stage is our issuance of an I-20 or a DS-2019 so that you can get your F1 or your J1 student visa. And then, of course, there's the visa interview itself. And finally, you know, your arrival to the institution and the start of your academic career. So we're going to start off with Casey kind of talking to you about how to get your I-20 or your DS-2019 from us.
Thanks, Charter. Okay, so to start the process of getting your I-20 or DS-2019, so like Charter said, you'll get admission to the grad school. So what we'll need for you to submit into our portal is your admission letter from the grad school. Sometimes we get submissions for letters from the department, although like we appreciate that. What we really need is your official letter from the graduate school. So we'll have that, a filled out and signed I-20 request form. And we'll look at that a little bit later on. Proof of funding. So if you have personal funds, you can submit that. Or if you have a scholarship letter or a fellowship or an assistantship, those are all will be considered proof of funding. And occasionally you might have to submit several different types of funding. So, so if for instance, your assistantship doesn't cover enough, you may have to supplement with maybe like a few bank statement of a few hundred or a few $1,000s. And then your passport. And this is for initial students who are not currently within the US, but if you are within the US and you're looking to transfer to UA, we'll also want a copy of your visa if it is still valid. So processing time right now, we're kind of in the peak season, so we try to get them as soon as possible, but give us about a minimum of 5 business days to from the time that you've submitted to go over your documents, and then see if we can issue the I-20. And if we have a problem, sometimes there's errors within our system that we need to correct, or sometimes we may need to ask for additional documents. We'll let you know, but try to give us that 1 week time period, and then we'll be able to reach out to you. All right. So within this, it's really important to make sure that you pay attention to the deadlines. So we do this because we want to make sure that you have enough time from the time that we issue your I-20 to be able to go to your visa appointment. Sometimes, especially in countries that have a lot longer of a wait due to COVID or other, or just a lot of students who are trying to get visa appointments, it can take some time. So we want to make sure that we have ample time to give you to get your I-20, apply for your visa, and get that appointment before the start of classes. So for the summer, classes start on May 30th. So we'll want to make sure that we have all of your documents submitted by April 28th. For fall, August 23rd is the start date. So July 14th would be the last day that we could issue an I-20 for fall 23. And then for spring of 2024, January 10th is the start date of classes. So December 8th is the deadline. Right, so most of you will come as an F1 student, but there may be some of you who will have a J student visa. Typically, unless you're going to be coming for a non-degree exchange program or a government-sponsored program that uses the J1 visa, you're going to come as an F1 student. So just be aware of like what you should come as. And if you have any questions, you can always reach out to us and we can talk with you about which one as well. All right, so one important thing when we're doing the I-20 is we want to make sure that your passport matches exactly with what the I-20 has on the information on the I-20. So we want to make sure that your passport is valid, and this is why we ask for your passport, so we make sure that everything matches up. So when you're filling out this part of the I-20 request form, make sure that you are putting in all your information. So even if you don't go by, like if you have several names but you don't go by them, it's important that you list everything, and also that your passport includes everything, because we'll have to put all of your names on the I-20. And also in the US, we use the month, day, year date formula. So I know sometimes it's switched to day, month, year in some countries. So we'll need to make sure that we have your birthday correct on the I-20, or we'll have to do a correction. All right. So if you have a spouse or a child, we will want to make sure that we have their information. So you can fill out the dependent section on the first page of the I-20. And then we also ask that you give us a copy of their passports as well. And if they are also, if you're transferring and you have your dependents here in the US and they have their visas, we'd like to see a copy of that as well, just to make sure that when we're filling out their I-20s, that we have everything correct on there. So for each dependent that you have, we'll require an extra $5,000 to make sure that we cover all those costs as well. So for when we're looking at the expenses in the I-20, which we'll get to in a second, that's covering just you. But your dependents will need to eat, have housing, things like that. So that's why we ask for the minimum of $5,000 to show that you are able to cover their expenses while they're here with you in the US. All right, so the minimum requirement that you have to show for to get the I-20 is $51,662. So that includes your tuition, health insurance, various fees from the university, and then your meals and housing and just living expenses. And that's just for you. So any dependents that you have, again, we want to make sure that we're adding $5,000 to that. So if you have a wife and a child, or a husband and a child that you're bringing over, you want to add $10,000 to that total. And then here at the bottom, where you see the Section 3 evidence of available funding, if you have multiple sources of funding, you can just list everywhere where the sources are coming from. So if you have an assistantship that covers $49,000, you can put that in there. And then personal funds or family or sponsor funds, you can put in for the remaining $2,000. Right, I know I've gone over this a little bit more, but when you're filling out this part, just to make sure that you show that you have your you have the expenses here. And the biggest thing is that you submit either your assistantship letter or your fellowship letter or whatever funding source you have. Make sure that you submit that. Regarding bank statements, we don't need to see a year's long worth of bank statements. Really, all we need is just a letter from your bank confirming that you do have enough money. And with that, we want to be able to see like a number on there, because we'll do we'll make sure that everything matches to US dollars on here. I'm forgetting the word, I'm sorry. But conversion, yes, thank you, Charter. So we'll make sure to convert your funds from whatever currency you use to US dollars. But other than that, we don't really need to see all of your funding, all of the your year's worth or 6 months worth of bank statements. But the important thing with the bank statement as well is that it has at least 6 months validity. So if you submit a bank statement today that's from March of 2022, we won't be able to accept that. We want to make sure that the bank statement is from 6 months from today's date, or whatever date that you submitted your I-20 request. All right, and then if you are currently in the US and you want to transfer your CVIS here to UA, make sure that you want to fill out section 4 on page 3 of the I-20 request form. So if you're an F or a J student, your CVIS number currently, when you anticipate you will transfer to UA. If you're currently on OPT or CPT, we'll need to know that as well, because if you are, you won't be able to continue to work once your CVIS record is transferred. And then the information from your DSO or ARO from your school that you're transferring from, and then their email address. We have this on our website as well, but just pay attention to, you'll have to have our school code or our program number if you're a J1. So you can find the school code here and also on our website. Okay.
And I'll take over here. So at this stage, you've submitted all your documents, you've been admitted, you have evidence of your funding, either through scholarship or an assistantship or a combination of an award plus personal funds. And we have issued an I-20. This is what it's going to look like. And the I-20 document, it's a 3-page document. And the important parts for you as a new student are really on the front page. You have your CVIS ID here at the top. You have your program or major of study. You have your program start date and your anticipated end date. You have the university's school code here. Those are the important details. Now, one note about all of this, please be aware that in the major or the degree program of study information, that is based off of an official list set by the US government. So the US Department of Education has what they call CIP codes or CIP codes. And it's a 6-digit code affiliated with every possible degree. Now, what the US government calls the degree and what the University of Alabama calls the degree might be slightly different. So we may call it geological sciences and they may say geology. You know, what that means is when you receive this, if the major doesn't match exactly the name of your major on your letter of admission or your offer, please be aware it is correct. These are matched. They're all mapped out. They just may not be exactly the same. So this is your main document. When we send this out, if there are errors or there are corrections that need to be made, you would be able to reach back out to us and we'll be able to correct that. Per regulations that came out post-COVID, they have allowed us to send these electronically. So we will send this to you as an email attachment, and that I-20 is official. You just print it out, you sign it, and you take it with you to the embassy for your visa appointment. So that is how you will receive your I-20. Now, for those of you who will be under government funding, for instance, if you're coming from the Turkish government funds, or if you have Thai government funds or Vietnamese government funds, typically in those 3 countries, the government, as part of their scholarship, requires you to obtain a J-1 visa. So for those very few number of students, I would say less than 5% of our students are on J-1 visas. You'll get something called a DS 2019. It looks very similar to the I-20. It's a 2-page document. Again, same type of thing. Your program is going to all be listed here. You'll have your zip code here and a brief explanation of the subject field code, and then a start date and expected end date. There's a lot more details on our page for obtaining your I-20 or DS 2019 in your visa, where it links through this and it takes you step by step through the entire document so that you have a better understanding of what it means. But what's next? Now you've received your I-20 or your DS 2019. The next step is to pay your CVIS fee. You need to pay your CVIS fee before you go for your visa appointment or enter the US. The CVIS fee is attached to your individual CVIS code. Now, if you have dependents, the good news is you do not have to pay separate CVIS fees for each of your dependents. You only pay for yourself as the F1 or as the J1. All of your F2 dependents and J2 dependents are covered under that single fee paid by the individual. For F1 student applicants, it's $350 is the CVIS fee. For J1 student applicants, it's $220 is the CVIS fee. And this is paid through the I-901 fee page, which is fmjfee.com. It is a .com website, but very much is a Department of Homeland Security website. So it is an official government website. You'll pay that there. Now, the method of payment can be done either by credit card, Western Union, or you can send a check on certified US funds to an address in St. Louis to pay for this. For most of you, credit card is going to be the easiest way to do this. There are a few countries that are prohibited from being able to pay by credit card and must use the Western Union option. And so if we have like students from Nigeria, for instance, I know that that is one of the countries. There's about 4 or 5 countries where they don't have it set up for credit card payments, and you have to use the Western Union option. So just be aware of that. So once you've paid your CVIS fee, you will get a confirmation of payment. You'll want to take that with you to your visa application when you actually go to interview. But the next step in this whole process is to fill out your online visa application. This is called a DS-160. Now we have a lot of resources on our main page, and you'll find this linked in the slides that will be shared back out with everybody. But you'll fill out the DS-160 online. There are a lot of great resources for frequently asked questions. There's an official example form that we have linked, and we have some notes there for folks about information that you can put in there, because that will ask for the person inviting you to the US, and really it's the University of Alabama that's inviting you to the US. And so you'll enter in our school information. There are a few places where you might get caught because obviously you're not here yet and it's asking for an address in the US where you will stay. These things can be a little bit challenging or a little bit tricky. Again, we have all of that information on our page for obtaining your I-20 and your visa. You will have to do a separate DS-160 for yourself and each of your F2 or J2 dependents. If we have any Canadians or Bahamians on this call, be aware no visa stamp is required. So you will not do a DS-160. You will not go for a visa interview, but you will have to pay the SEVIS fee, and you will need an I-20, and you'll need to present these documents at the port of entry. Those are the only two countries that the US has an agreement with that does a visa waiver for student visas and other types of visas. Now, you've paid your SEVIS fee and you have filled out your DS-160. Now you need to schedule your visa interview. Now, we do have this question come up pretty regularly where people say, can I schedule my visa interview before I get my I-20? It is technically possible. I will tell you, it is really not a good idea. And the reason why is I have had this happen over and over again where people have booked interviews and then they're pressing us to get an I-20 when they don't have proof of funds, they haven't been fully admitted, they don't have any of the documentation they need to actually get an I-20. They have gotten ahead of themselves by scheduling interviews far earlier than they are able to actually attend the interview. So I would recommend do not schedule an interview until you have obtained your I-20, paid your SEVIS fee, and completed your DS-160. There's a reason why the ordering is the way it is. But once you've done the DS-160 and the previous steps, you can book your visa appointment. Now, in some countries, visa appointments are really difficult to obtain. They may be backlogged for various reasons. In extremely populous countries with limited number of visa locations or interview locations, it could be that there's just no available interview dates for several months. What we would recommend is that when you do this, if you have multiple consular locations in your country, check to see what the interview availability is in other consular locations within your country. The other thing you can do is to book the earliest available appointment, even if it's many, many months from now, and then go through the process of requesting an expedited or earlier visa interview. We have gone through this for multiple years with COVID, and the embassies are very well used to this, that they have a backlog of visa appointments. And so what they do is they place priority on the students who will begin their programs within usually 60 days. So typically most embassies have a process where if you are within 60 days of your visa or of your study start date, so August 23rd for those who are coming in fall, within 60 days of that date, they'll allow you to expedite a previously scheduled appointment to an earlier date so that you can get your visa on time to be here by August. So you can check the visa wait times online. This just gives you a general idea of what the time frame is. It's through the State Department's website. You just look up the city location for the consulate where you will be conducting your interview. Now, the documentation that you need for your visa interview. So what you're going to be taking with you to the visa interview is generally the following. You'll take a passport, and it has to be valid for at least 6 months beyond your period of stay, unless you have an exemption. Now, for students who are coming for long programs of stay, maybe you have 3 years of validity, but you have a 5-year degree program that you're coming for. That's going to be okay. It's not unusual that your passport might expire while you're here in the US, but typically they're looking for your validity of your passport to be valid for at least 6 months beyond the entry date to the US. So that's really the kind of key. The guidance on the US Embassy website is that you have to have it 6 months beyond your period of stay in the US, but really they're looking at your entry date to the US as kind of the key factor there. You'll need to carry with you your DS-160 visa application confirmation page. This will have a barcode on it. It'll show you the date that you completed the application form. You'll want to show your proof that you've paid your application fee. You'll want to take a photo, which is 5 centimeters by 5 centimeters or 2 by 2 inches. This is something that you'll take with you if the upload of your passport photo does not work in the DS-160 online form. Occasionally the photos fail, so having a physical copy of the photo with you is important then. You'll take with you your I-20 or your DS-2019, your proof of CVIS fee payment, your admissions letter, and any proof of funding that you use to get your I-20 or your DS-2019. So scholarship letters, award letters, fellowship letters, personal funds. You'll take that same documentation with you. When we are preparing the I-20, we're asking for copies or scans of these documents. We don't want the originals. You're taking the originals with you to the visa interview. You're carrying those with you at that time. Some additional documentation that may be requested. Now, a consular officer has the ability during the visa interview to ask for any number of documents. They can ask for copies of your transcripts or diplomas or degrees or certificates of schools that you've attended. They could ask for copies of your test scores, like your GRE or your TOEFL or your IELTS exams. They regularly may ask about that to see whether or not you meet the credentials typically required to enter into a graduate program. So please be prepared to have that on hand in case they do ask for that. They will really focus on your non-immigrant intent. And you're going to hear me say this again, but as an F1 visa applicant or a J1 visa applicant, you're coming on what is called a non-immigrant visa, which means that you have to prove to the visa officer that your intention is not to stay in the US permanently. So what they're going to ask for a graduate student is, what are your overall plans? How does this play into your future employment plans, your long-term career goals? How does that tie into your plans to return to the home country or to a residence abroad? If you can't establish that well, and they don't believe that necessarily you wouldn't stay and immigrate to the US, then they may deny your visa. The number one reason for a visa denial, number one, there's not even anything close to it, is failure to prove non-immigrant intent. That is always what we see for our visa denials, and it holds true for nationally reported numbers. The last thing that they may ask is how you're going to pay for your education, your living expenses, your travel costs, and it may be beyond the 1 year that we've asked you to show. So, Casey was going through all the expenses you need to obtain an I-20. Be aware, we're asking for 12 months of living expenses and 9 months of study expenses. Now, that is because the I-20 asks us to calculate a year of expenses. Now, if you're coming for a master's or PhD, it may be a longer program than just 1 year. In fact, I anticipate that a PhD will take longer than 1 year to complete. We're only capturing a snapshot of the first year. You're only showing your proof of funding for the first year. Your visa officer may ask you, how are you going to pay for the second year and the third year? What is your source of income or source of funds beyond that first year? Now, if you're on an assistantship that's renewable, it should be pretty straightforward. But if you've had to supplement this with personal funds, they may ask you, okay, so your family provided funds for this first year. Will they have the ability to pay for the second year and the third year? So be aware that that is something that regularly comes up. You should also check the U.S. Embassy and or consulate page to see if they have anything else specifically that they would like for you to bring to the visa interview. Every embassy and consulate has its own criteria for what they request for visa applicants. There are some standard things, but sometimes they have additional items that they would like to see. So just check the embassy or consulate website. That's going to be your best resource for this. Now, when you're preparing for your visa interview, one thing I would say is in our I-20 and visa page where how to get your I-20, we have this linked in the visa interview section. It's 10 points to remember when applying for your non-immigrant visa. These 10 points are briefly headed here, but there's a lot more details in the link that we provide. But again, number one, ties to your home country and your residence abroad. When you're trying to establish your non-immigrant intent, you're trying to show, hey, I've still got family back home, or I've got a job that's been promised back home, or I will inherit my family's business, or I will inherit my family's property. So these are the things that tie me to my home country. They look at that pretty carefully, and they are waiting for you to provide that information. Of course, you'll do this in English. You'll speak for yourself. When we say speak for yourself, don't rehearse answers. Don't practice answers that are provided on YouTube, like answer this way. I mean, there's some good guidance out there, but if you memorize a speech verbatim, visa officers are very, very savvy. They will realize what you're doing, and they'll realize that you are not speaking for yourself, but you're actually just giving them a rehearsed answer that you may have copied from somebody else. They want to hear some genuine answers from you. They want to know how your program fits your career plans. It's not just that you got admitted to a program, but like now that you're going to be doing a master's in, public health, like what is the long-term program objectives? What are your goals for this degree that you're coming to pursue? They'll want to know more about your background, your history. Again, there's different requirements for different countries. They may ask you about your employment opportunities after graduation. If you have dependents, spouse, or children who will remain at home, you'll need to be able to provide that information. They may come to join you later, but that actually is something that then establishes your ties to the home country if you have dependents. And there might be other special circumstances that come up, but overall, be truthful, be honest. Be aware that when you do a visa interview, the answers you give are recorded. They note those answers. They keep that in a database that they share with every other consulate and embassy in the world, of US consulates and embassies. And so if you are denied a visa once and you go back for another visa interview and you change your answers, that visa officer is going to look at your history with them and they'll say, oh, well, you answered differently before. You said this other thing. And so that could be held against you. So please, be truthful. Your truth at that time may be different. Your situations might change. You need to be able to explain that. Usually everything is explainable. Everything can be backed up, but just be honest at the time that you're giving your interview. Now, you've done everything. You've got your I-20, you paid your CVIS fee, you did your DS-160, you've done your visa interview. Now you're waiting on your visa. Most of the time, the visas are approved pretty quickly. They go through maybe a little bit of administrative processing, and then they're issued within a matter of just a few days. If after the visa interview you are sent to longer administrative processing delays, just be aware that that is usually tied to something called the Section 221G of the Immigration and Nationality Act. What that means is that your area of research or study or something about your case requires them to have more of a background check, more of a review of this. You may be requested to provide additional information about your program of study, about your intended courses that you're going to take. They may ask for a letter from your professor that gives an overview of your intended program of study. They may ask for your professor's resume or CV that shows what they have done, what areas of focus they have. There is really nothing that can be done to expedite this process. This is an independent process. And I will be clear, once something is sent to administrative processing, it has to be cleared before a visa can be issued. Now they will say it's a refusal under 221G. That does not mean it's a visa denial. It means it's a refusal, meaning they can't issue the visa until it's been cleared. So if you get that 221G refusal, it's not a denial. It just means it's gone to administrative processing. You can just track it online to see where it's going, but you're not going to get very many updates until it's been cleared. There is no one in this world who can expedite this, not even the President of the United States. And when I say that, that is actually not said lightly. Even the President of the United States cannot expedite an administrative processing clearance. That is something that has been established over the many years, and it is an independent review process done by a separate agency. One thing I will say is, if you are selected for administrative processing, if it does go through that, and then it leads to a delay beyond the first week of classes for the term which you've been admitted to, our only option will be to defer your admissions to a following semester and update your I-20 or your DS 2019. So if August 23rd comes and goes, and then we get to August 30th, which is at the end of the first week of classes, and your visa is still stuck in administrative processing and you were admitted for fall semester of 2023, we will have no choice but to defer your admission or to start that process with your department if they are all in agreement to defer your admission to a future semester. We have no control over that. And honestly, if a visa has not been approved and issued by that point, there's not a lot that we can do. So anyway, I'm preparing you for that possibility. We have a lot of information on our website about that, but please do communicate with us if there are delays, communicate with your department, communicate with graduate school. Now, the visa gets issued, and that's the ultimate goal. Once the visa is issued, it will have your face here instead of Big Al. It'll show an issue date and an expiration date. Now, a lot of the questions that we get are, why did they give me just these dates? Be aware that the visa validity date is based off of what's called reciprocity. You can look up US visa reciprocity, and then it should bring up the State Department's website, and you'll be able to look up your country and then look up, there's a tab for every single visa type. You can click F1 or J1, and it'll show you what the visa reciprocity is between our country and yours. So if your country gives US citizens a 6-month visa for studies, then you will get a 6-month visa for your F1. If your country gives us a 5-year visa, reciprocity tables will allow us to issue up to a 5-year visa. So it is definitely built around reciprocity between the two countries. So if you're wondering why your visa may have been issued for a certain period of time, go back and look at the visa reciprocity tables. There'll be an established length of time allowed for your visa. Please be aware your visa only has to be valid on the day that you're entering the US or re-entering the US. A lot of people panic because maybe the visa wasn't issued for the entire length of their degree program. All the visa is used for is entry to the US. Once you're here in the US, your I-20 or your DS 2019 controls your ability to stay in the US. We talk about this a lot during our orientation. You'll hear this from us many, many times. But of course, the visa is important. You can't get to the US without it. But it's okay if your visa might expire in the middle of your program. All it means is the next time that you travel, you'll have to get a new visa. When can you enter the US? So a lot of students are very much trying to get here as early as they can. If your visa's been issued, you can enter up to 30 days before the report date listed on your I-20 or your DS 2019. So for fall semester, August 23rd is the first day of classes. Our report date is August 16th for J1s and F1s coming in the fall semester. That means you can enter up to 30 days before August 16th. And now it's 30 days, not 1 month. So when you look at this, it actually would be July 17th is the earliest that a fall semester admit could be able to enter the United States on our I-20 or our DS 2019 issued for the fall semester. So on I-20s, it will have an earliest arrival date printed there. And that'll be very clear. That's the earliest you can enter the US. Because many of you are going to try to be booking flights, and you may want to get here a little early to settle in, to attend orientations, to move into your apartments. We all understand that. But now let's talk about getting to Tuscaloosa. So Tuscaloosa, if you're not aware, geographically, we're on the west side of the state of Alabama and the central portion of the state. We're about 1 hour drive from the city of Birmingham, which is the largest city in the state of Alabama. And so our closest airport is Birmingham Shuttlesworth Airport. The airport code is BHM. So if trying to fly in, that is going to be the closest airport. Some may look at Atlanta. Atlanta is a major airport. It's probably the busiest airport in the world for passenger traffic. Definitely the busiest in the United States. Atlanta is a fine airport to enter. The problem is it's about a 3-hour drive if you have your own vehicle. If you're trying to take a bus or shuttle service, it will be a longer trip after entering Atlanta. So we do suggest people to arrive to the Birmingham airport where shuttles can be had a little bit more readily. We do have shuttle information on our website for transportation, so that should help. As you prepare for your life, I know that a lot of you are maybe at this stage too, thinking about where am I going to live? Just keep in mind about off-campus housing. And I think we're going to do a session on this again in the summer. Is that right, Caitlin and Amanda? We're going to do another session kind of more geared towards, okay, here's the stuff that
That's
you
correct.
need to know. Good. But just to let you know right now, most off-campus housing will require lease terms of at least 1 year. It's not uncommon that you'll have to have big deposits. The contracts are pretty rigid. So if you sign a contract and then you get here and you don't like your apartment, unfortunately, you're stuck with that contract. So we definitely recommend do not sign any contract until you've arrived here and can actually see the property and know whether or not it's going to meet your needs, because that is a massive commitment. It's probably the most expensive thing that you're going to pay for outside of your education. And so we want to make sure that you are going to end up in a place that you will like. There's some great resources on the off-campus housing webpage. And then just generally, you'll find other resources at visit.ua.edu. We have a campus visitors guide. It tells you a lot about the campus, about the history of the institution, about things to look for. And then there's the Tuscaloosa's visitors guide, visit tuscaloosa.com. It'll tell you a lot more about this great town that you're going to go be a part of. We call it T-Town, Title Town. Like, it is a great little community here. So please do take a look at that. And with that, I think I'm going to end my share screen. Again, I've got this up here for our contact information, but I believe we had a number of questions that have been pre-submitted, and I want to leave this last 15 minutes so that we can kind of get through those.
Yeah, so I just want to remind everyone, if you have any follow-up questions that haven't been answered, go ahead and send those in the Q&A chat now. I want to remind everyone that, like Charter said earlier, we are going to have a session in both May and then again in July for our admitted students. The one in May will talk about housing options, finances, kind of preparing you after you've once you've received all your I-20 and visa stuff. And then the session in July will be a current student panel, kind of a last steps, kind of preparing to get here, what our panelists thought they wish they would have known in preparing to arrive here in the United States. Definitely some suggestions and things like that. So be sure to register for those. We'll drop those in the chat so you can register for those. So those will be different types of sessions than the ones that we have that we're doing today. The recording of this session will be posted on our YouTube page by the end of the week. We'll send out an email with a link to our YouTube page. There is a recording of a session we previously held, but the one today will be posted by the end of the week if you want to look at those. So definitely check those out. But I'll go ahead and check the chat now for any questions that we haven't answered already. So a question is, when can students begin registration for fall classes? Who wants to answer that one?
I will. It is open now. You can start registering as of yesterday. So once you establish your MyBama and get with your department, contact them before you register so that you know what classes you should and should not be taking. Don't just register for the classes that look fun. And be sure that you check in with them, but you can start registering as of now. And that is for fall classes as well as summer.
So our other question is, should I wait for a scholarship result? I'm assuming that's supposed to be before applying for I-20.
It's so you can. We have issued many I-20s based off of personal funds. So if you were providing personal funds to get the I-20 so you could start your visa process early, that's perfectly fine. We can then later update it if you are issued an assistantship or a scholarship award to reflect those changes in funds. However, I will say this, if you have not been issued any funding, there's no guarantee that you're going to be issued funding. And so if you are getting the I-20 on the basis of, personal funds or family funds, our expectation is that if you get a visa and you arrive, that you will be able to pay for your studies. I would say that if you don't get a scholarship or an assistantship offer, not to anticipate that will change at the point of arrival. We've had students who have been, kind of going off of hope or faith that they would be able to somehow secure funding after arrival, and unfortunately, that has not always been the case. So, just be prepared for that. We will happily issue an I-20 based off of any eligible funds, and we will update based off of changes in funding. But I just be careful. Now, if you provide personal funds, it will not impact the decision-making about the scholarship or the assistantship. Those are separate considerations. We're not the admissions unit. We're not the academic department. So we're not sharing that information back with them. Like I said, it's, for us, it's just a matter of, have you been admitted? Do you have the funds to be able to be issued an I-20 or a DS 2019? And if those two things are true, we will issue the I-20 or the DS 2019. So, yeah.
So the next question says, I'm a new PhD student, has on-campus living application finished?
It has not finished, but the availability of housing on campus is almost non-existent. I have been told by the housing office that they have had more applications from first-time freshmen. These are the 18-year-olds coming to campus than they have ever seen. In fact, undergraduate admissions has had the largest admitted class that they've ever had in their history. And thus on-campus housing is not necessarily going to be available for even upper class undergraduate students. I do not anticipate any graduate housing availability. It was always very difficult to get graduate housing on campus. So I would strongly recommend that you look to off-campus housing. I do not anticipate that you will find on-campus housing at all.
So the next question says, I got their response from the university saying a decision had been made, but haven't heard anything since. What should my further steps be? So once you're admitted at the graduate school, we start sending out follow-up emails with next steps. So you should have received an email with some next steps. We send those out once you're admitted and receive that admission letter. We start sending those out about once a week with things such as setting up your MyBama, getting your I-20 documents and things like that together. I checked your application and we have sent that email to you. I'm happy to resend that, but definitely check on those. I'm also going to drop in the chat a link to our Getting Started page with the graduate school that also links over to the international offices page where they kind of have some steps too. So please look at that. Those are all the things that you can go ahead and start doing now in preparation for your arrival. But of course, reach out to us if you have any questions or need anything. Yeah, so the next question is, when should we be expecting a response from you regarding application for GTA? If you're referring to a graduate assistantship within the department, it of course depends on the program. If you're asking specifically within the graduate school, could you clarify which office or which department you're referring to, and we can kind of help you because I know there's currently we're interviewing for the graduate assistantship within the graduate school right now. But definitely if it's within your academic program, please reach out to them to follow up to see, because it depends on the program.
And I would add too, I think fellowships will go out by April 1st, or that first week next week. The last round for nominations from the department was 2 weeks ago. And so they should be getting on making those decisions. And usually they make them April 1st because they require you to get back to them by the 15th of April. So.
I see a question here that says, I was told we might not be given a visa without funding from the school. That there's truth to that. And then I can also say there's not truth to that. We've had many self-funded students that self-funded students, those that are coming through family funds or personal funds, we issue I-20s for all the time, and visas have been issued to, if the availability of funding is there, then you've been admitted to a program that's pretty normal to have that issued. There is often seen by the visa officers that you have a stronger support system if you do have an assistantship or a scholarship or some sort of funding from the institution. And on top of that, it means that it's been a little bit more selective. It's not just that you've been admitted to a program, but you've also been funded by the institution. So it can help in your interview process to show that you've received some sort of scholarship funding for your program. However, it is not the be all end all. I've had many thousands of visas denied for people who have been fully funded by my institution over the last 22 years. And so it does not mean that just because you receive a scholarship or an assistantship that you'll be guaranteed issuance of a visa. Nor does it mean that if you don't receive a scholarship or an assistantship that you'll be denied a visa. I think it's always situational. And please keep in mind that at the graduate level, scholarships and assistantships are rare, especially at the master's level. It's typically PhD programs that are funded because you're going to be here longer. You're usually assigned to a faculty member who not only is going to be your mentor and your supervisor, but also has funding to pay for your studies and for your program. Master's students are typically self-funded, and I think that's true of most universities in the United States. So, if you're coming for a master's program and you're self-funded, the embassy will not be surprised by that at all.
So I just want to remind everyone, we are going to be wrapping up in the next few minutes. We'll answer 1 or 2 more questions, try to get some in the chat. But if you do have any follow-up questions, please email us at gradschool@ua.edu, or the international office if y'all want to drop your email in the chat as well. Please reach out to either of us. We're happy to answer any follow-up questions. And again, we will be posting the recording of this webinar on our YouTube page by the end of the week. The one that we did back in January, very similar presentation, probably the exact same information was given, is already on our YouTube page. So please check that out if you want to review or if you were late or anything to hopping on with us. So I'll go ahead and ask this other question. The earliest visa appointment I got is September 23rd, and my program start date is August 23rd. What? Oh, Charter, it looks like you're typing an answer.
And I can answer very quickly. So we touched on this earlier. If you book the visa appointment, book it. You must schedule that visa appointment regardless of whether or not it's on time. Once scheduled, you can then request the embassy to expedite your visa appointment to an earlier date. Typically, you cannot do that until you're within 60 days of your intended start date. So you would have to wait until closer to June to make that request that your visa appointment be changed. In the meantime, you can just kind of keep an eye on the calendar and go back and with the scheduling system. And if you see an earlier appointment come up, you just move your appointment. It's pretty easy. But if you can only secure a September date, then secure that date, book it, get it on the books, because that's the only way you can then expedite it later on.
Thank you, Charter. So I'll ask one more question. I'm trying to see. I'm a new PhD student who applied for visa. My status has been under administrative processing for 2 months now. Any insights on how long does it take in a normal circumstance?
None. So it's 2 months is not unusual. I would say 95% of cases are cleared within 2 weeks. About 5 to 10% take longer than 2 weeks. When they take longer than 2 weeks, 2 months is kind of the norm. A lot of embassies have some information on their webpage that you can't make any inquiries about your case unless it's been more than 60 days since your visa interview that has been in administrative processing. I've had this come up. I've made many hundreds of inquiries. Amanda knows this because I often copy her when I do this. And I get the same answer almost every time. The embassy will say, "You're not the visa applicant. You can't inquire about this, nor can you expedite it." And so I happily send those messages, but I usually get the same kind of diplomatic, have the visa applicant reach out. So you as the visa applicant can reach out about it if it's been pending more than 60 days. I typically do see these stretch beyond 60 days, especially in the last couple of years. The same staffing issues that everyone else has had has hit the administrative processing units, obviously. And so we were seeing delays of closer to about 3 months. It seemed to be the average. Once it had gotten beyond that normal 2-week window, if it went beyond 2 weeks, it was almost like it went straight to 2 to 3 months processing. So, and I've seen them take longer than that. There is no timeline. There's no guaranteed timeline, but you can make an inquiry if it's gone beyond 60 days by contacting the consulate or the embassy about that. And they have information on their visa application page about those types of inquiries.
Okay, well, we will go ahead and wrap up now. I believe we were able to get to most, if not all, of the questions. Please email us if you have any follow-up questions. And again, also register for the upcoming session in, sorry, I'm trying to get the link really quick, for the upcoming sessions in both May and July. I'll go ahead and drop that in the chat now. Again, those will be different sessions, so be sure to register for those to get you the best prepared before you arrive here at the University of Alabama. I want to thank everyone for joining us. Do y'all have anything to add?
Roll Tide.
Roll Tide.
Thanks, guys.